Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Questions with Connie. On today's video, I'm going to talk to you guys about The Watchers and let you know what I thought about the movie. Did I love it? Did I hate it? You're about to find out. But without further ado, my overall rating for this movie was a 4 out of 10. And I know that's a little disappointing, but I have my reasons for that in particular, so I want to share that with you guys. And of course, all opinions on movies and reviews in general are subjective, so I welcome you to go and watch the movie yourself, figure out what you think about it, because, you know, everybody has different opinions about things. You may pick up on some aspects of the movie that I didn't. So first thing to note is that it is the directorial debut of none other than M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. The problems that I found with this movie definitely were not with what I would say would be the director aspect of it, but rather the plot line and kind of timeline of the movie in general. So I'll get into each of those details here in just a second, so that way you know exactly what those are. There's a couple of different things that I judge a movie on. One is a trailer test, and that is whether or not I feel like a movie lived up to the trailer. Did not feel like this one passed the trailer test. I think that the trailer kind of set it up as this creepy, scary movie, but really it's more of a sci-fi or a thriller. And that was definitely a letdown for me because I was expecting more scary based on the trailer. The other thing that I do judge a movie on is something I call the husband sleep test. And I have mentioned this to you guys in other videos, but if you are new to the channel, this basically is just a thing that I do when my husband comes with me to a movie, is whether or not he was able to stay awake in it, because if he doesn't like a movie or if it's too slow for him or whatever it is, he usually will fall asleep. And in this one, oddly enough, it actually did pass the husband sleep test. But I do feel like there's a couple of caveats to that, because we did have coffee earlier in the day, and also we watched this movie at about 5:50, so pretty much right as soon as work ended. We ate dinner during the movie, and so just a couple of different things, but it did pass the test. He stayed awake the whole time. However, he rated the movie even lower than I did. He gave it a 2 out of 10, which I thought was a little harsh, but he's a harsher critic than I am for sure. The other thing that I like to point out is whether I feel like the scary to story ratio or balance, if it was even, or if I feel like one was heavier weighted than the other. So in this one, I definitely feel like the story was way heavier than the scary. You kind of felt like you were still waiting for the really intense scary stuff to happen, and it just kind of never happened. I was kind of bummed out about that because I was really excited to see exactly what they were going to do with that. You know, how creepy was it going to get? Because I think because the concept alone of being inside of a structure of any kind, whether it be your home or being out somewhere, and it being dark and you being in front of a window, is creepy, when basically outside is nothing but blackness or darkness and you can basically only see your reflection. That part of the movie concept I think is genius, because I think that kind of scares all of us, or at least it scares me. I don't like open windows, especially at night. That's a no-go for me for sure. So I thought that was a really great concept that they did, but I just don't think that they delivered enough on all of the scary stuff. Like, it just, if you're gonna sell it as a scary, make sure that you pack a punch, because otherwise what you're gonna do is you're gonna let down horror fans who are expecting a scary movie and not gonna get one. Another strange aspect that I thought that they had in this film that didn't really add much to the storyline was that they made Dakota Fanning's character of Mina have a twin sister. So I kind of get that there's a lot of, you know, doppelganger vibes, and that ties into the plot. So I won't go into that too far because, again, I'm not going to spoil it for you. But her character in the movie ends up being a twin. That's not really a spoiler because it's not going to give away anything in the movie, when honestly it could have just been a plain old sister, not a twin, and it not have taken anything away from the movie and been fine. So I really didn't understand that part. It just kind of felt out of place. You may think differently than I do. but that's just how I felt about it. I thought that was kind of odd. And another thing is when it comes to like, you know, human behavior movies, I know that we can't really predict how any of us would really behave in any given situation unless we've actually lived it. But there are some things that just kind of take me out of a movie when it comes to examples of kind of how people in certain situations behave. So the way that these characters become accustomed or whatnot to this situation they are thrown into, I really didn't like that part because I feel like I couldn't buy it. I can't go too far into that because I don't want to spoil anything for you. But something that I would have changed personally in order to have made this a better movie or to have rated it higher, first off, I would have cut a lot of the build-up in the beginning on storyline. I don't feel like a lot of the beginning parts really added enough to the storyline to justify why they're in there. The other thing I would have done would have been to, rather than make some of the characters random, you know, people that were kind of thrown together in the situation, I would have made it like maybe a family of some kind, two partners and a child, or maybe even, you know, older parents and an adult child. I don't know, but I would have just kind of changed the dynamic there to make it make a little more sense as far as to why they all stuck together and did what they did. But again, I can't give too much into it, and I can't really explain too much why I feel that way because I don't want to give it away. But I also would have made the movie shorter and would have not made some of those parts feel like endings before the actual ending, because that just kind of made it feel like it was dragging on. I would have also added a whole lot more scary in order to really categorize this as a horror. I don't really go all the way that analytical into my reviews. I'm kind of looking at these movies at face value and seeing what I pick up from them and just kind of running with that. The strong points of the movie, I would say, is acting. The actors definitely did a wonderful job. I will say that Owen, and I won't pronounce her last name because I tried to get it right so many times before I recorded this video, and I'm just not even going to attempt it because I know I will fail miserably. But I will put a picture of her and I will put her name in here so that way you guys can see it. But honestly, she does, and I want to say it is Owen Foire. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but either way, she is a phenomenal actor. Everything I've seen her in so far, she just does such a great job, and I could honestly watch an entire movie of probably just her talking because she has such a wonderful presence on camera, and she is just one of those people who makes you kind of stop and listen when she speaks. I will put some images here of her and some of the things she's been in. I know she was in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, one of the newer ones that just came out that I saw on Netflix, and I believe it's still on Netflix now. She was also in the Tarot movie, which I thought she was pretty great in, but again, she's just one of those people that has really good stage presence, I would say, and I am happy to see her in future movies for sure because she definitely has that draw about her. Dakota Fanning does a great job too. I am used to seeing her in other roles. I think the closest thing to horror that I've really seen her in is the Twilight movies. Don't judge me, but actually, you know what? You can judge me if you want. I really don't care. But I don't know what I expected of this movie, to be honest with you. When you call something a horror movie, though, me being a horror fan, there are definitely some expectations that automatically I feel are set forward in my brain. But another strong point in this movie was definitely set design. So it being filmed in Ireland, Ireland is so beautiful and so scenic. It is definitely somewhere that is on my bucket list to visit at some point in my life because I think the overall culture and everything is just so interesting, not to mention, you know, people's accents are beautiful, or at least I think they are. I would definitely want to visit there someday, and I like that they shot a lot of really nice scenes of the actual natural scenery there, so that was pretty cool. Disclaimer, I did see the movie at Cinemark in D-Box seats, so if you're not familiar with those or you've never experienced those before, they are kind of a immersive version of regular seats. So basically you have this little button on the side of your seat and it's kind of one of those recliner seats, but it moves. Like, it will move with the movie. It vibrates. It'll kind of help add another layer of depth to your movie watching experience. It is a little pricey, so it's one of those things that you kind of have to decide if you want to spring for it. The first one I ever experienced with this technology was the Evil Dead movie. I loved that. It definitely made that movie a lot more intense. Some scenes, because the beginning, shows a lot of shots with a drone, got me a little motion sicky feeling. So there's that. It is something that I think is worth experiencing if you are watching a major action movie or a horror movie or something with a lot of movement or, action in it, because it helps add that layer of intensity where you kind of feel like you're getting to be in the movie. So if you haven't experienced it and you're interested in doing that, as far as I know, Cinemark is the one that does that. I don't know if other theaters do. I haven't really looked into that, but since I'm part of the Cinemark Movie Club, that's where I go to experience that. And I did that for this one because I figured the storyline wouldn't be too intense. So I thought this might add a little bit of a layer of, interest for me. And I was right. So for the best parts of the movie, like I mentioned, the strong acting, the beautiful cinematography, the scenery, the set design, for all of those things, in those categories, if I was just rating this movie on those things alone, I would give this movie a solid 8 out of 10. But of course, that is not all that a movie is. So I definitely had to take it down many notches because of a lot of the other issues that I had with it. The items that I thought really kind of drug it down were story, plot, and the way that they set up the plot. Some holes that I felt were in the storyline, which I won't really go far into because I don't want to do any spoilers, because I want you to have the opportunity to check this movie out and judge it for yourself without feeling like you had the ending spoiled for you. The other thing I would say definitely needed some work is the length of the movie. I think that they could have definitely cut it down in a lot of places, especially the beginning, because some aspects of the storyline really didn't need that much depth in order to really get to where we start off at. So the other thing I feel like could have been something to help break up the monotony in some of the parts of the movie would have been some good dark humor. And I've said this in a lot of my other movie reviews, that I think that dark humor sometimes is devalued or undervalued when you're talking about your thriller or your horror movies. Sometimes it can really add that extra something that just takes a movie up a level. I personally love my horror movies to have some humor in them, and I will say that I am probably a little biased because I did grow up watching movies like Freddy Krueger, and if you are a fan of the original Freddy franchise, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. The dark humor that's thrown in there just gives a different spin to it. But really, honestly, anytime a great joke or some great comedy is thrown into some intense movies, it just kind of helps to liven it up a little. So don't get me wrong, the overall concept of this movie is good, and it does start off very interesting and it hooks you in, so you are definitely drawn into the whole plot and what's going on, and you'd want to find out what happens or what the whole deal is with these watchers in the end, but it takes too long to get there. There's a couple of different times in the movie where you think it's about to end and then it doesn't. And when a movie does that, it just makes me think, okay, let's get on with it already. When I think that, for me, the movie is pretty much dead at that point, because if I want it to hurry up and end, not a good sign. Like I said, there's some really great aspects to it, so I don't think that it is a total failure of a movie. I just think that it could have been great had they tweaked a lot of small things. So the ending. When I mentioned in my previous video about going to see this movie, one of the things I mentioned was looking forward to the ending and whether or not the director, being M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, was going to kind of follow in the same footsteps, if she was going to make this like an elevated horror, if there was going to be a satirical layer to it, if it was going to have a double meaning. I'm sure there probably is somewhat of a double meaning there. I kind of picked up on it, but the ending is kind of bizarre, and I won't go too far into it because it would give things away. There's this part toward the end, and it's kind of the climax, but it just really, you know, with all this buildup, with the movie being so long, or what felt like so long, I didn't really feel like the payoff at the end really justified the drag. It does kind of feel more like a slow burn thriller than it does a horror. I really don't think it should be classified as a horror at all. I think if I was going to categorize this movie, I would call it a slow burn thriller slash sci-fi or fantasy movie. Watching it with the D-box seats where you have that like immersive experience, it was still really not that scary, which says a lot, because this is an experience where your seat is literally shaking you when there's jump scares. If it was going to be scary, it definitely would have been, but there just wasn't enough scary. So that being said, that's where I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.